Good morning, Melissa. How are you?
Good morning, Jason. I'm doing very well. It's a great day here in Illinois. How are you doing?
In Illinois. Yes, I am doing really well. I'm in upstate New York and it's a cloudy and dreary day, but it is April. And I was driving this morning noticing the trees are budding, which is always an exciting time of the year. How about in Illinois? Are trees budding?
Yes, and we had your rainy, dreary day yesterday. So
Yes.
condolences there, my friend. But the sun is bright today.
Well, it sounds like I might have some sun in my future then.
Absolutely.
Tomorrow perhaps. That's really great. Well, Melissa, I'm so glad we're getting a chance to connect today. Just by way of introductions, Melissa and I know each other briefly through a mutual friend. And so Melissa and I don't really know each other. We've had a really cool conversation so far, but not on the air. And we're about to do that. So Melissa, I'm really, really looking forward to getting to know you. And let's kick that off. So first things first, Melissa, love you to introduce yourself. You mentioned you're in Illinois. Anything you want the audience to know about you to kick us off today?
Hi, my name is Melissa Ebken. I'm a pastor of two small congregations that I absolutely adore. They're farming communities in central Illinois, and I spend my life helping them to engage their faith and do what we can to help the community and the world around us.
Very cool. So when you say small, what size are the congregations?
Well, our town that I live in is 850 people, and the other community is 5 miles away, and it has about a little less than that, but pretty similar. And on a Sunday in each congregation, we'd have 30 or so.
So that is it's pretty small. I grew up going to a Lutheran church in St. Paul because, Minnesota, like good Lutherans there. I'm trying to think, we
Right.
probably had, I'd say like my memories, like maybe like 70 to 100. So not a huge congregation. It's interesting. And then I moved to New York City, and, in New York City, we have Hillsong. We have some other like mega churches that are just massive. It's like going to a concert. It's crazy.
Right.
It's basically like going to a big concert.
I love little small churches. I grew up in one. The people there genuinely know each other well. They show up for each other in amazing ways. And I just adore a small church. Nothing against a big church. They do amazing ministries. But there's just a heart in a small church that calls to me.
Well, there you go. I think this leads perfectly into my first question for you, Melissa.
Excellent.
And it doesn't have to be about this topic, but what's something that you nerd out about?
I nerd out about science. I was a biologist before I went to seminary, and I studied genetics. So I'm totally nerding out on anything vaccine related and messenger RNA related. And I also nerd out over physics and black holes and quantum mechanics. Don't ask me any questions because I hold it together very loosely in my mind. And if you ask me a question, it'll all come tumbling down like a Jenga game. My
so
favorite.
You're comfortable with nerding without having to know all the details. That's what I'm hearing.
Yes.
Yeah. It's really funny. I was talking to my friend a couple weeks ago and I said, man, I never thought when 2020 started, the two things that I would know a lot about is infectious diseases and electoral college science. I feel like that in 2020. Like I feel like I know quite a bit about both of those now. And I never expected to really I like the electoral college stuff, but I feel like by the end of the election cycle, I knew so much after November. And then obviously the COVID has been front and center for over a year now. We're recording, and by the way, we're recording this in mid-April 2021. So yes, we've been living in this thing for, I guess it's actually 13 months today, really.
Yeah.
It was March 12th when the world kind of ended. So yeah, man, I do want to ask you some questions about these things because these are all things I don't really know. Like when I hear the mRNA thing, like all I know is that that's Moderna, something to do with the Moderna vaccine. I don't know anything about what it means.
Oh my gosh. All right. The
Here we
DNA
go.
is the main. Okay, picture it this way. Imagine in World War II, you're watching a movie, it's black and white and all grainy, and you've got all of the scientific folks in a room together planning out the perfect blueprint for a missile or some kind of weapon system or whatever.
Mhm.
And they're in a bunker locked away where nobody can get to them. That's like the DNA in our cells. It
Yep.
never leaves the nucleus or that bunker, and nothing ever gets into it. But it sends out little messengers, thus the name messenger RNA, and they take the plans to the part of the cell that builds it. So it's like taking the blueprints to the factory. Now, imagine if you're an enemy and you want to disrupt that process. Maybe the easiest way, since you can't get into the bunker, is to find one of those messengers and pull a little switcheroo and change the plans so that when those plans get to the factory, they're not building what was intended.
Hmm.
And that's a loose analogy of how this technology works. That the
Phenomenal.
virus thinks it's going to replicate itself, but the body says, hey, you're that dude with the spike, and I don't like that. So off with your head.
I don't like this crown you're about to bring in here.
Yeah, right. I wear the crown. Nobody else comes into my cell with the crown on.
Some may call it the corona. Yeah, that's really,
Right.
oh man. I do find, I'm not much of a science person, but I do find, it sounds like you and I actually share this, Melissa. Like I'm curious because I'm a curious person, but I don't need to know all the details, but I am interested in like kind of the high level thing, but I'm sure you've gotten this question a lot. I'm just going to ask it now because I was going to ask it later anyway. What led
Sure.
you from kind of this, your background and what you started doing to being in ministry?
You know, that is a question that I could spend hours answering. I'll try to give you the shortened, summarized version. Um, I graduated college in 93. Don't do any math. And at that point, there was a push to rehabilitate uh, the medical, the insurance, and all of that stuff in the country.
Mm-hmm.
And research and development was shut down. All the money was frozen to research and development. So I moved back to my hometown and started teaching. I taught biology and I got connected back to my home church. And I just felt a calling to go into ministry. And I was never more angry about anything in my life because that it was never on the plan. That was more school and I wasn't having it. So I ended up going to seminary. That would be the shortest version.
I got really pissed off, and then I did the thing that I didn't want to do.
Right. And, the dean of the seminary I had to interview with him. And he said, what would you do if I told you no? And I said, part of me wishes you would. And we can set all of this aside. God can quit tormenting me about it. I did what I could do and could just walk away with a clear conscience.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, real betrayal there. He gave me a scholarship.
Uh,
You can't count on anybody these days.
it's in coaching, we call that a breakthrough. Like
Yeah.
stand for your breakthrough outside of what you're comfortable with. That's funny.
Right.
Well, Melissa, I know we're likely to get into more of this. So I won't bore the audience with a bunch more questions about science and religion for now, because I am likely to go deep in the rabbit hole with you further than you want to go, and I don't want to torment you that way quite yet.
Oh,
Maybe a little
man.
bit later. Maybe
I've
a little
never
bit later.
seen a rabbit hole I haven't fancied. So
All right. Well, let's talk more. Let's get into the rabbit hole more specifically about you. And to start with, we're going to take a look at something that is inside of your comfort zone that might be outside of somebody else's. And I want to take something off the table for you and make this a little bit more challenging. I want to
okay.
take off the table for you standing up and delivering messages to people because it's what you do for a living, right? Part of what you do for a living. So I want to
Fair
take public
enough.
speaking off the answer, because everybody's like, oh, public speaking. I'm like, yeah, but you're a public speaker. That's just too easy. So, you're a pastor, right? So you're a public speaker. So I'm going to take that off the table. So what's something else that's inside of your comfort zone that might be outside of somebody else's?
For me, it would be sitting in those really uncomfortable and difficult spaces with other people,
Mm-hmm.
people that are afraid or deeply in grief or in some kind of awkward emotional mess that they can't even name. I'm really at home in those spaces.
Mm-hmm. That
And
is, oh, sorry, go ahead.
no, I find over and over again in my life, standing in a grocery store line, people tell me odd things about themselves that I don't know that they share with other people.
Mm-hmm. Well, I'd say as much as you begrudgingly came along back in the day, it sounds like you're in the right profession.
Well, I believe that now. I can,
Yeah.
I'm willing to allow that maybe God knows a little more than I do.
Yeah. Well, so like the reverse of that question, what's something for you that you're uncomfortable with or that's outside of your comfort zone that's going to be inside of somebody else's?
Well, I have a couple there. The first is small talk, believe it or not. Gosh, I really struggle with small talk. Let's just jump right in. Let's rip the band-aid off, rip off the scab. Let's just get to the heart of it. Jump into the
Yeah.
deep end of the pool. And hard small talk is difficult for me a lot of times. The
Melissa, can I
other
ask you,
thing,
Melissa, can I ask you something about that?
absolutely.
If it's not apparent, the audience, people that listen to my show knows like small talk is not a challenge for me. It's something I love. What do you what do you deem or how do you define small talk? And I'm asking for the audience and for myself as well to like learn more about this. How do you know like what is small talk to you versus getting into the heart of it? Because for me, and I just share this with you, and I don't know if you've heard this from others. Sometimes my small talk it actually is the heart of it. It's how I get access to it. And so I'm curious for you,
Absolutely.
like how do you define small talk? How do you know when you're in small talk?
And I think a lot of it has to do with energy flow and extroversion, introversion. I don't think introversion and extroversion have anything to do with shyness or outgoing necessarily. I think it
Right.
has a lot to do with how your energy flows. And for me, we've already had that 20-minute conversation in my head. I'm sorry you don't recall it, but we had it, you know, 10 minutes before the phone call began as an introvert. And as an
Yeah.
extrovert, you haven't had that yet and you have it out loud. So for me, that would be the difference. And I really should do a better job with people of letting them know the conversations we've already had that they weren't necessarily present for. That could be helpful.
Yeah. I love that analogy. I've never thought of it that way. Because for me, and this is so do you identify more as an introvert?
More so, yeah, not completely off the edge introvert, but I
Yeah.
do my best thinking in my head, not in a conversation, which
Yeah.
might
And it's
become really apparent.
this podcast is like the perfect scientific experiment where I'm literally just going to show up. I know I'm going to ask you, and then I'm just going to create on the fly. And you've probably thought out all these answers and everything. But it's really interesting. I love that analogy, Melissa. I've never thought of it that way. That's so cool. That if we're going to have a conversation, you've already kind of had it. And for most of my conversations, I have had nothing until it's in the moment. I mean,
Yeah,
very little, unless it's like a strategic conversation or there's something I need to prepare for, of course. But overall, like that's just such an interesting way to think about that. You gave me some like really something to think about there. So thank you.
sure.
Yeah. Hmm. What was, and sorry, I know I interrupted. What was the second thing that would be outside your comfort zone?
Oh man, going on a cruise. I really don't want to be I would love to go on a cruise if I could be the only person on the cruise or my family. But the thought of being on a ship at sea with tens of thousands of other people, oh, I just can't. I can't. if something goes wrong in that situation, it is really, really wrong and not
Yeah.
quickly resolved.
Yeah. I've actually never been on a cruise before. I've
Me
done a lot of
neither.
vacations, never been on a cruise. And man, I can't imagine what it must have been like last year and like February and March when COVID hit and people were on cruise ships. And
Yes.
there's that one, I think it was a New York Times podcast. There was some podcast. It was like the last remaining cruise ship that was still under sail, and they had to be on at sea, I think like 2 or 3 months, but it wasn't
Right.
fun because it wasn't fun. I think they had to
Right.
be like reprovisioned. They had to like have people come out to the boat wearing like full hazmat suits. Like, it just does not sound fun. Yeah, and you're right. Like cruise ship
No.
in a cruise ship, like COVID's on a cruise ship. That's like a horror movie. It's like a zombie movie. You're like, we're in this enclosed space where
Exactly.
we can't go, and suddenly there's a thing. We're in big trouble.
Yes. And that you read not very often, thank goodness, but just when I think maybe I could go on a cruise, an article will pop up where there was a sewage issue on a boat, and nope,
Oof.
I'm out. I'm out. And I don't have any
Oof.
problem flying on a plane, but
Yeah.
the cruise ship deal, there's no way.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know. I'm not sure I ever want to go on a cruise. And now that you said this, I'm pretty sure I don't want to go on a cruise.
And my
I am
apologies to the
certainly,
cruise industry. You bring joy to so many people, and I
yeah.
applaud you for that. And I'll
Yeah.
send my people there. I'll meet you back on the island, unless you want to
I
let me
will
go by myself on the boat.
I will tell you one positive thing about cruises. Our friends have two kids, they're like 10 and 8, and they went on a Disney cruise. And each day the Disney cruise redecked out the boat in different themes. So one day it was like Marvel, one day it was Star Wars, and they said it was really cool. Like you woke up in the morning and the waiters and waitresses were like stormtroopers. And they
Wow.
had like they said they've done a bunch of cruises. They said the Disney cruise is you're still in a cruise ship, but it is pretty cool. Like it's Disney, right? So like, and then the next
Right.
day it's like the Marvel theme. So you wake up and like Iron Man's on the deck. They said it was pretty damn cool.
It sounds like it. That sounds fun.
Yeah, that sounds fun. But yep, Melissa and I, you probably won't find us on cruise ships. Was what it sounds like.
Right.
You're like, God, I will go and be a pastor, but you will not get me on a cruise ship. That is not happening.
I know. And they have chaplains on cruise ships. And somebody said, oh, wouldn't that be amazing? And I thought, no, no,
Yeah.
no.
All right. So let's move on to talk about speaking a little bit.
Sure.
So I have the power to give you 5 minutes, and you can deliver any speech you want to, any topic, anything you want to share. And you have 5 minutes, and everybody in the world's going to hear it. Melissa, what would you talk about, and what would you want us as the audience to do?
I would want everyone to know that they are ridiculously loved and valued beyond any kind of reasonable measure by this holy energy. And we have all kinds of different names that we identify this energy. Some call it God and some Christ. And, other faiths have other names. And I'm not picky about the name, but just know that that source loves you. And not because of what you do or don't do or would like to do or think about doing, just because of you. And if we could have that truth in ourselves realized, even for a flash here and there, we could make this world so amazing.
Yeah.
And I would want everybody to know that. And I would like them to engage in a process that would help them realize it and to live into that.
Yeah, I'm really glad you brought this up, and I had a feeling it would be something along these lines. What about the people that are out there listening? And I feel like this is like this is a sermon, like a sermon topic too, of course. There's people out there that and I'm sure you counsel these people in your congregation, you talk to people that just they have such a lack of love in their life, either from they're single, marriage isn't going well, like things just aren't going well, and they just aren't
Mhm.
feeling the love. And I think this is a very, very, very topical because of the pandemic as well, is there's a lot of loneliness. And I think loneliness can really end up feeling like a lack of love, or maybe it's vice versa. I'm not even sure. But what would you, if somebody's
Absolutely.
out there listening to, like, they're like, you know what, I just don't feel like I'm lovable. What would you, like, yes, you can tell them, oh, you are loved, you are amazing, you're loved, but like, that's probably not going to land just to tell them that. What else would
Right.
you counsel them on, or how would you work with them on that?
Well, Jason, when life is easy, faith comes pretty easy. And when you
Yep.
experience the worst of what the world has, faith is pretty darn difficult.
Yep.
And we have heard versions of God that don't necessarily mesh with love and acceptance, especially if we've been told that God can't love us or won't love us. And I have a unique background given my biology background. And oh, by the way, I was a helicopter mechanic in the Army National Guard for 10 years.
Amazing.
And all of these experiences have given me this unique perspective on life and God and creation and evolution and becoming. And I love to work with people who have outgrown the faith of their childhood or have been told that God cannot or will not love them, or who want to integrate science with their faith understanding.
Yeah.
And, God is not a head thing. Nobody's going to be convinced that they're loved
Mhm.
or lovable or loved. It's an experiential thing.
Yeah.
And putting yourself in a position, whether it's just shutting out everything in your mind and meditating, or just sitting in nature among trees and grass, and even that is inaccessible to some people because
Yeah.
there's not a landscape available that has that.
Yeah.
But just watching the moon or the sun or a plant, walking down a sidewalk, you see a crack in the pavement and you see grass growing through or a dandelion or something. That
Mhm.
to me is one of my favorite sermons because it says no matter how powerful and forceful something is laid on top of you, you can break through. I
Yeah.
mean, if you were going to throw something at somebody that was coming at you, would you choose a rock or would you choose a clump of grass? I mean,
Right.
I would choose the rock, because that seems a lot stronger. But, even that can't prevent that life, that blade of grass from
Yeah.
breaking through it.
Very cool, Melissa. That's a great message. You're bringing back to my younger days of going to church. It's not, I feel like I'm part of your congregation right now. So thank you.
I'm not really sure where that started. I know I got taken off on something. I hope that addressed the question you asked.
No, it did. And I mean that in the most positive way too. It gave me a good nostalgic feeling. And on that note, we're going to take a really brief commercial break, Melissa, and we'll be right back after this.
The Talking to Cool People podcast is brought to you by Jason Frizzell Coaching. Jason works with amazing people who are looking to find and develop their passion and purpose and create their journey to wherever it is they want to go. Check us out at jasonfrizzell.com, Facebook, or on Instagram. Jason loves hearing from anyone who thinks it would be cool to connect, to be coached, or to be a guest on our show. Email him at podcast@jasonfrizzell.com or DM him on Facebook and Instagram. And now, back to some more amazing conversation on Talking to Cool People.
And we are back. So, Melissa, this is the part of the
Yes.
show where my guests get the opportunity, even more so than usual, because I generally talk too much. This is where I just want to have my guests share what you want the audience to know about you. And this is a wide open question. So, Melissa, what do you want me, this includes me, so we don't know each other very well, me and the audience, what do you want us to know about you?
Well, I wish you could see how I'm using my hands when I talk because I don't know that you're really understanding what I'm saying without all the motion. So
Are you
I
a
just,
big hand mover?
I am.
Nice. Me too. Me too.
Right. No, seriously though, on what we were speaking about before the break, we have uh, we have been inundated by a different perception of who God is, and that megaphone is a loud one. And I think it's time for us to step up and share that maybe there's more to the story than the common perception that we hear on the news or in, in the media at large. We hear about all of the judgment and all of the exclusion, but there's a lot of Bible scholars who have a different takeaway than that. And I think it's time that we step up and share that more. I think the world is starving for that message, that biblical message that God loves weirdos like me and like you. And, all of these folks that have been told they're outside of things. Jesus spent his life telling people, no, you're the reason I'm here. You're the people I choose to be around. And that's a message that I want out there more and more.
Very cool. What's besides you obviously have a platform in your congregations.
Yeah.
What about outside of your congregations? How are you sharing that message outside of that?
Well, thank you for asking. During the pandemic, I realized that church does a good job most of the time about introducing people to the Bible and, to prayer and hopefully to the holy by whatever name the tradition uses to identify holy. But what we may not be doing well is helping people build their spiritual health. So I've been putting together a program that does just that. And I use a GPS tool, and it's a new tool developed by Paul Burns and his Soul Metrics company. But what it does is it takes a snapshot of your spiritual health at the moment so that you can quickly identify areas where you can grow. For instance, if your arm hurts and you go to the doctor, an x-ray is helpful so that you can quickly identify if there's a broken bone or not. And if there is, you can treat that and it will get better quickly. And this GPS tool is similar. It helps identify what's in your spirit is clogging, if you will, that love of God from coming to you and living in you and being shared with others around you. So I've put together a program and I use that tool as a starting point and have put together a course, if you will. I don't know if a course is the right term or not, but a pathway to help folks identify those things within themselves that is preventing them from being in full relationship with God and others. I call it Spirit Strong program.
Nice. So when you say course, is this something that's online?
Yeah, I'm developing it right now. And gosh, my passion right now is for healthcare workers, particularly nurses.
Yeah.
And, nurses, oh my goodness, before the pandemic, the attrition rate was so high for nurses. And that should tell us something, that their job is tough. And by nurses, I mean LPNs and CNAs and all of them. They see things the rest of us don't. And it's not really things that they can bring up at a cocktail party. So, it's rough. And then this pandemic, I think, is going to exacerbate that in ways that are troubling. I think it wouldn't be shocking if we saw higher rates of addiction or divorce and post-traumatic stress in these nurses and healthcare professionals. So I'm working diligently right now to bring this program to as many nurses as possible. And yesterday I was listening to a program that was talking about heroes and how using the word heroes can be almost damaging. And this was in a context of veterans. And I
Mm-hmm.
think it applies to nurses too. If you're a respiratory therapist, say, and you have 30 patients on a vent, you can't give the care you want to give to 30 people at the same time. And you've got to make
Yeah.
difficult choices.
Yeah.
And you can't be your best self in that kind of situation. And I think we need to bring some light there that these folks have been through something unimaginable to the rest of us. And it's taken a toll. And I think we need to do more than just calling them heroes. I don't know if that shoe fits real well for a lot of people. And I don't mean to
Yeah.
diminish them. I want the opposite. I'm saying what they have given and what they've done and the choices they've made probably in some cases have left them debilitated.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, when I
And
hear the word heroes, I go to like I'm picturing military, which you said you have done military service as well. I have not. Military, or when you see people that go out and do something, save people's lives, law enforcement, medical, they don't ever want to be perceived as heroes. No, they're like, this is what I'm here. This is what I do. This is my calling. This is like
mhm,
what I'm here for. And like when I say I don't want to be perceived as heroes, it's not like when I hear the word hero, Melissa, this is a cool thing. There's something about hero that we label other people that they don't want, because a hero
mhm,
sometimes means that there's some sort of credit you should get, or some sort of, you've done something that's like you've done something that's extraordinary that isn't possible for normal people. And most people that you see this on the news, I'd say like a lot of pastors, like, oh, they're my hero. Like, no, like this is my calling. This is what I do. This is my responsibility. And I'm just another ordinary person just doing the thing that I'm called to do or that I'm responsible for.
right. And sometimes these folks have had to make a choice in a nanosecond that destroys them personally or
Mm-hmm.
emotionally. And people are pinning ribbons and awards and calling them heroes, and they're hurting. They're hurting. We might see it as heroic, and it may be heroic, but there's a lot more complexity there, and they need space to be authentic in their experiences and what they are feeling. And I want to give that space. I want to hold an open space, and not to exclude everyone else, but just particularly for healthcare workers right now, because they have been through something the rest of us can't. And we can't just run out and sign up to be a nurse and run in and help. That's a journey in itself to become that. And I want to
Yeah.
hold space for them, that they can be authentically who they are and say what they really want to say and heal their own wounds.
Yeah. I'm going to, so I got my vaccine last week, and I'm in
Excellent.
New York State. So they opened up 30 and over a couple weeks ago, signed up and got it. And
Hmm.
I got inspired by my friend Brandon by this. And I thought this was a cool thing. And I want to see what you think of this. So the nurse, and I don't know what it's like in Illinois, but in New York State, like you go to the site, there's a lot of volunteers there who check your license, get you ready to go. And then you sit down and it's a trained medical professional. I think either nurses or doctors. Got my shot. And what I did is I got her name and I donated to her favorite charity in her name. And I got
Oh,
this inspiration from a friend of
nice.
mine. I thought that was such a cool, like such an amazing thing to be able to do, because
Yes.
I don't even know if I would assume they're getting paid, but I know I can't pay her. But she was
Hmm.
so touched by it. And I'm not trying to make myself the hero. This is not my idea. I've never even thought about it. My friend posted this on LinkedIn, but she was like, wow, that's so amazing. Like people aren't doing that. And I say all this because I don't think she wants me to think she's a hero. I think she just wants me to like recognize that like you're doing good for society. And that doesn't
Yeah.
make you a hero. That just makes you a person who's doing the thing you're called to do.
Right. And you're magnifying her impact.
Yeah. So I asked her what her favorite charity was. She told me, and my wife and I made it, it wasn't a big donation. We made a donation, her name. She doesn't know me. She known me for 2 minutes. She wiped my arm and stabbed me and then told me to go away. That best shot I've ever received, by the way. But
no, that's amazing. Yeah. That's amazing. And that's really magnifying her impact. And, when I had somebody question me, because I do charge for people to take this program for a few reasons.
Sure.
And one of them is I want to make a difference in the things I care about in this world. I want to be a philanthropist, and I want to magnify the work of others that I see as valuable. And, also people that have a little skin in the game are going to be a little more conscious about participating.
Absolutely.
But I wish everybody could think of themselves as philanthropists. That's not just a game for the multimillionaires and billionaires.
Totally.
We each have an impact, and we can magnify that impact that others have. That, we don't have to recreate a food pantry. We can support one that's already there.
Right. Yeah. The other thing I wanted to ask you about that we had talked about a couple weeks ago, you mentioned that you also provide support to other people in ministry, like other pastors and such. Would you be willing to spend a little bit of time on that?
Sure. I'm a coach, and I love my colleagues. They are so smart and creative. I love working with them because I feel like I always come away with the most from our interactions.
Yeah.
One thing that the pandemic has shown is that we're no longer geographically bound when it comes to spiritual growth and church membership. For instance, here in Illiopolis, Illinois, I can be a part of my church family here, and the church doesn't have to be everything to me. If there's somebody out in Utah that's inspiring to me, I can be fed through interaction there as well, or the pastor up in Northern Illinois or Southern Illinois. And I can still be a part of my church family locally. So I think that the borders are open, so to speak. And the more we collaborate and share these great ideas we have, we don't have to be everything to all people. We can refer folks to, what, this guy is great with the Psalms. If you're into Psalms, why don't you hit up this person? It'll transform your understanding. I think creating a culture of that is a powerful way to move forward. So I love working with pastors.
Very cool. Very cool. Well, let's move along. And I'm really excited about this section for a few reasons. I'm not even going to say why I'm excited. I'm just going to tell you that I'm excited, Melissa. And because I'm a complete external processor and complete extrovert, I'm just telling you how I feel in the moment. There was no planning to this. You probably had thought about this, but this is the part of the show where my guests ask me something or a couple things and I will answer them. And so I'm really excited to hear what do you want to ask me that I can answer for the audience?
I want to know how you define beauty.
Oh man. Wow. So you went for the nice, easy, tactical answer.
Well, I might
how
have
do you
a
define beauty?
This
is like what's the meaning of life? Oh,
sure,
wow.
something easy. Yeah.
So you're really testing me on my external processing skills and improvisational skills.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
as the audience can tell, I'm dumbfounded.
A deep, profound thing, which I'm sure you're more than capable of, but it could also be
probably not. Maybe. that's debatable.
Well, I assume the best.
Yeah.
Don't let me down. So no pressure.
Exactly. Yeah, I don't want to let you down. All right. How do I define beauty? Oh, I define beauty and I'm laughing right now because I don't know if I do Toastmasters, and I recently I don't know if have you ever done Toastmasters before?
No, I haven't.
So you know the concept, right?
Yes, loosely.
It's a low stakes place where you get to practice your public speaking. And one of the parts of Toastmaster meetings is a thing called table topics. And it's exactly what you just did. It's you stand up and the table topics master will give you a question and you have 1 to 2 minutes to create an improvisational speech about it. This is a great table topics question. And this is really present for me because I actually competed for our club a few weeks ago and I won my first contest and got to the second round for like the regionals and got my butt kicked because they asked me a question. I just completely failed it. And I feel like I'm already failing this and I'm stalling. How do I define beauty? I define beauty for me in, and this is going to be so cliched, but it really is. I'm not even going to say it. I'm going to say it. It's in the eye of the beholder, but what I mean by that is beauty for me is seeing the possibility in the small things.
Ooh, I love that.
Yeah. And this is it. And I say this, Melissa, not because I'm some person who has always lived this way. This is a newer thing for me. I used to be more of a no or a maybe person, or hey, it's got to be either this way or that way. In coaching, we call this like an either or context or a black and white context. Either you're winning or you're losing. It's you either do this or you do that. And there's not actually a way to create a win-win to have both. And for me, the thing that's beautiful now is that I see as beauty is that most things in our world, most things, not all, most things are not facts. Most things are interpretations and judgments and assessments and opinions. And if you look at the world through that place, you actually get a chance to create possibility where you may where others or yourself may have not seen it exist. And to me, that's beautiful. And this is where, if you look at the major successes of humanity over the the expanse of humans being on this world, on this earth, this is how we create everything. If you remember, I'll give you a very specific example. This is called the callback. I'm bringing it back to something very specific. Not getting political here at all. This is not a political discussion. But if you remember last year, they're like, oh, coronavirus. Well, the last time we created a vaccine, it took about 3 to 5 years. And in less than 1 year, you can get vaccinated. Now, I don't think we probably know enough to know what the long-term side effects, if there are going to be any or that. But as humans, we create things that we create from possibility where possibility before did not exist, or we actually have no proof of it. And, speaking in religious terms, like to me, beauty is almost the definition of faith at the same time, because faith is, and you tell me, but the way I learned faith is the ability to believe in something without any actual proof of it. Like you can't really prove God. You can't really prove, something that's never been done. Can we prove that we can do it? No, but we have the faith that we're going to be able to do it. So we go out and we do it. So for me, that's beautiful. That's beautiful.
And the beauty of imperfect action, if we wait until we see the entire picture or until we've got every aspect thought out and debugged, which, that's important if you're launching a spaceship. You want to have a clear picture there. But most things in life don't require that much precision. And the beauty of imperfect action, of taking a first step when you can't see what the rest may entail. But when you do that next thing, then a lot of times the energy in the world or the universe or the holy is going to build on that in a way you couldn't anticipate. And then another step is clear.
Yeah.
So I love that.
I think the best example of this is being a parent. For me, is being a parent. And I know you're a parent. I'm a parent too. Like you create another human that had never existed, and you don't actually know how they're going to turn out. And mine are still young. Like one of mine is very young. So he's just smiling and hanging out right now. He hasn't really showed any tude yet, but we have a 5-year-old and she's got some tude sometimes.
Mm,
and you just can't predict it, but it's still beautiful to see that, oh, wow, this is actually a human being that's growing up. She's developed her own personality. She's got her own opinions and thoughts. And yes, they're annoying in the moment sometimes, but what's beautiful is that like, there's no way to predict how she was going to be or how she's even going to be in the future. And it's beautiful to know,
right.
like, but it's all going to be okay.
Yes.
And she's who she's going to be. And yes, we get, as parents, we get the chance to hopefully shape that in a positive way. But at the end of the day, she's going to make choices for herself around that. I actually think that's really beautiful.
Absolutely. And that's part of my understanding of beauty is when people choose to do the thing that they don't have to do, and they do it just because it makes the world a little better or a little more palatable or a little more tolerable. And Margaret Mead is an anthropologist, and she was asked one time what the earliest signs of civilization were that she encountered. And she said it was a healed femur, that in the wild,
Femur.
if you will, and I'm making air quotes. So
Yeah.
for those who can't see through, the world to where I'm sitting. Um, but in the wild, if you have a broken femur, you're done. You're going to be eaten, and you cannot move to find shelter and protect yourself. That's the end of your life.
Yeah.
But when there is a healed femur, it meant that another creature helped you. Another creature protected you and brought you food and tended to you and to your needs until it was healed. And I love that. People don't, little things like putting the grocery cart back and not leaving it in the lot.
Oh, the worst.
Yes. I mean, those are my people, the people that will put the grocery cart back. That's beautiful. That's doing something that gives you no reward whatsoever, but it makes the world better.
Yeah, absolutely. You reminded me of something. And have you seen the movie American Beauty?
Yes, but it's been a long time. Please don't quiz me.
No, I'm not going to quiz you. I'm actually going to read you something. And yes, it's Kevin Spacey's character, so there's a little more context to this. There used to be. But he did win an Oscar for this role, and it won Best Picture in '99. And does it hold up well? I haven't seen it recently, but I don't know if you remember what he says. And I can't remember if he says this it's like a monologue, and I can't remember if it's at the beginning of the movie or the end of the movie, but he says, the quote is, "It's hard to stay mad when there's so much beauty in the world. Sometimes I feel like I'm seeing it all at once and it's too much. My heart fills up like a balloon that's about to burst."
I do remember that.
It's a very good line.
So much,
very good writing.
Yeah. And so much of beauty is mindset, don't you think?
Oh, absolutely.
That two people can look at the same thing and somebody can be moved to tears and another person just irked at what's in front of them. And it's all about mindset.
It's funny you say that. This is a great place to wrap because I do a lot of work on myself, obviously coach, and I have a coach and therapist and lots of support and all these things. And I'm in process of working on myself, and I'm laughing because I used to be the irked person and I've moved much more into the beauty person. I'm like, yeah, that resonates more. I spent much more of my life as the irked person, just to be totally frank and honest about it.
And which do you enjoy more?
Yeah, it's funny. I actually really enjoy being less annoyed with my life. Isn't that funny how that works? That I really enjoy. It's so weird, Melissa. I actually enjoy being happy. So strange.
Weird.
So weird. And yes, do I still get irked? Yes.
Well, sure. But you don't have to live there.
But I don't have to live there. Maybe I think judging myself, I probably still live there for too long. Well, thank you for a really amazing question. I've never had that asked before. So thank you for that, Melissa. That was really cool.
Sure. Oh, I feel like I won then.
You won. Are you a competitive person?
No, not really, but it seemed like a funny thing to say.
You definitely won. I'm a very competitive person. So you beat me. You win.
Awesome. Do I get a parting gift? Are there prizes? Is there a bonus round?
You get an amazing parting gift, and it's me asking you more questions. Isn't that the best gift you could ever hope for?
Beyond my wildest dreams and expectations.
Congratulations. All right. Melissa, thank you. Seriously, that was great. And I also weaved in some American Beauty reference, which is totally random. And I just have to say this because, again, I'm just an external processor. That movie is 22 years old. That kind of blows my mind.
Doesn't it?
That movie came out in 1999. That is crazy.
Oh my goodness. Yeah. Wow.
Yeah. I feel
Time
old.
flies, as
Anyway.
they say.
Yes. So, Melissa, back to you. What are you passionate about?
I am passionate about people becoming spiritually healthy, and especially people who have been shunned or told that they're not worth the time or effort to spend spiritual resources on. And I want people to, I say the word and a lot. I just noticed that. So sorry. But I am so passionate about people knowing that they matter. They matter. Well, unless they multiply themselves by the speed of light squared, then they energy. But mostly people matter. And I want them, just every person, to know that they have substance and importance. And if you've experienced the worst of what this world has to offer, kick it in the teeth and show the world that you matter, that you're better than what the world has given you. And reach out to me. I'll help you.
Yeah, there you go. And I'm glad you said that, because we will actually talk about how people can get in touch with you at the end of the episode, but I'm going to wait on that a little bit. Next thing for you, Melissa, what's the thing that you are most proud of?
I am most proud of completing AIT. AIT is part of the Army training that comes after basic training. And I went to basic training between my junior and senior year of high school, because you can do that when you're in the National Guard. And after I graduated high school, I went back to AIT, where I learned to become a helicopter mechanic.
What does AIT stand for?
Advanced Individual Training.
Got it.
That's where you learn whatever job you're going to do.
Got it.
So I showed up there, and Jason, I got to tell you, I was the shyest, most quiet, without a spine kind of person there ever was on the planet. And when I showed up to AIT, there was one other woman there. She was much further ahead in the program than I was. I felt so alone, so isolated, so overwhelmed. And I decided in that moment, I was going to have to make a choice. Either I was going to come out on top, or I was going to wash out and fail. And I decided, for the first time in my life, I was worth it, and I was going to come out on top. And there were a lot of obstacles that came to challenge me, and I overcame them. And I did come out on top.
Nice.
Yes.
Very nice. All right. I like to call this my vulnerability question. You're probably going to love this question based on what you said. You like how you like to get deep. And not that this is the deepest question, but I do like this question. And I actually have a second part of the question that I like to spring on guests, especially if they haven't listened to any of the other episodes. So, Melissa,
yes,
what's something you were afraid might actually be true about you?
Oh man, I'm really afraid that the stubbornness I see in my kid has come from me.
Every parent's worst nightmare.
Oh my goodness. It's way more charming in myself than it is in another.
Isn't it amazing how for you it's a superpower and it's something that you're really good? It's definitely a skill for you, but not for your child.
Oh my goodness. No, I am afraid that it may be true about me that I maybe hang on to things when I should let go. And I don't know. Sometimes I think that's a good thing. Sometimes I wonder. My Cubs finally bared me out in that one, because I was hanging on to that for my whole life. But
yes. I'm from Minnesota. I think we talked about this. So never had a Super Bowl championship. The last time we've had a pro sports championship is 1991 Twins. So Not as long as the Cubs drought, but I feel you. It's hard to stay positive at some point, especially for me when I moved to New York, and you have the Giants who won 2 Super Bowls. You have the Yankees who won a bunch of World Series. Yes, I'm glad that you brought this back to sports, because that's big sports fan. And
just don't speak Mets to me. They broke our hearts back before I was born, but still relevant.
Yes. Yeah. Well, so the second part of this question for you is, what's the thing you do to compensate for that fear? How do you manage it in your life, or what, manage it, not manage it? How do you address it?
That's a great question. I am also unrealistically optimistic a lot of times.
Yes. That's a great coping mechanism.
Yeah. And people will just look at me. The house is burning down around us. It's like, look, it's not dark anymore. No, but you're going to die. Stop it. Get out of the house,
Yeah. That's funny. I had a guest on, and I don't think I've released their episode, but they're probably maybe not quite as in touch with their humanity as maybe somebody like you and I are. And then I'm like, what are you afraid? And they're like, give me this list. I'm like, what do you do to compensate? They're like, I don't do anything to compensate. I'm like, oh, you're lying right now. Like, did you take psychology 101 in college? Because we are not, as humans, we are not driven by pleasure. We are driven by pain and suffering. So whatever the thing is that you're afraid might be true about, and fear, whatever the thing that you fear about you are definitely compensating in some way, without a doubt.
Absolutely.
And it's funny when you this might be, even a question you as a fellow coach with, like, in your ministry work, it's a good question. People are like, well, I'm afraid that, I'd get all sorts of things like, oh, I'm afraid I'm lazy. I'm afraid I'm never going to be successful enough. The lazy one is hilarious, because the people that say that are the people that, like, work themselves to the bone to prove to themselves and to others that they're not lazy. Yeah. The people that, oh, I'm never going to be, or like, I'm unlovable. People that are afraid that that's true, that they're unlovable. Those, and I'm sure you have dealt with this a lot in your career, as you see people, these are the people who have bad relationships, because they get into bad relationships because they want to prove that they're lovable, and they're willing to, like, lower their bar to be loved by somebody.
Yeah. And somewhere along the line, somebody put on their soundtrack that they were unlovable, and it's time to delete that selection.
Yeah, exactly. Well, thank you for being honest. And, best wishes dealing with the stubbornness of your child, not for yourself, but just for your child.
Thank you. This kid can dig in, let me tell you.
Yeah. You're like, oh my God, it's so annoying because they're as stubborn as me.
Right.
You're like,
and
can you
can do that.
Less stubborn than me?
Or be it someday, but you don't need to perfect it now. Work that out later in adulthood.
That's great. That's awesome. All right, Melissa. So we're going to start to wrap up here. I got a couple more questions for you. So This is my big philosophical. Let's close it out with a flourish. Melissa, how do you see the world?
I see the world as a good and beautiful place, with full knowledge that it can be ugly and awful at times. Mm-hmm. But I believe we have it within us to be different.
Mm-hmm. So you see the world in that place, and you also recognize, of course you recognize that it doesn't always feel that way to everybody, or to yourself sometimes. What would how would you counsel somebody to get them present to that if they're just not seeing it? And I'm saying this specifically, and I don't know the relationship between ministry and, like, therapy work or counseling. Mm-hmm. But I like, one of the things I hear in that is there might be somebody listening who's actually depressed, or, like, medically depressed, who can't see the world that way. Like, their brain just isn't allowing them. How do you support somebody like that? And for somebody who wants to see the world as a more beautiful place, wants to feel more positive, but is dealing with situations that are not having them allowed, but maybe they're not actually depressed. What advice or counsel would you give to those types of people?
The spiritual masters always say, if you want to find the holy, it begins with the journey within yourself. And I find that to be more and more true the older I get. And somewhere, somehow, it was written in our consciousness that we weren't worth it. And, I do Bible studies at the county jail, and that has
Wow.
been a life-giving. I get way more out of it than anybody there. But one of the things I
I can only
noticed,
imagine. That's beautiful.
yeah, they, the women I see there, they're not there because they're bad people.
Yeah.
They have been told that they are bad people. So this is where they end up. And I know I said the same sentence twice, but there's a big nuance in there. And transformation happens for people deep down inside when you allow for the possibility that you might be worth a darn.
Yeah.
And, ministry and therapy and coaching, they all overlap, but they're each specialized and so important in their own ways. And if somebody is listening and say, yeah, easy for you to say, but I'm really not, I beg to differ. You might think yourself a monster. You might have been told you're a monster, but deep down, you have a source of light and life in you that can become love.
Yeah, that's beautiful. Yeah, what I hear in that is, like in coaching, we're looking at context that people have about themselves, have about the world, and most powerful coaching is going to come outside of their context, because we're reliable inside of our own context we're reliable to be ourselves inside of our context. Where we need support, like you said, through spiritual counseling, or like therapy, coaching, is the people support you outside of your context. And what I hear in that, and I'm trying to remember who said this, and I can't remember if it was Barack Obama back when he was the first term president, Illinois guy, as I'm sure you know.
Yes.
You're like, yes, I'm well aware. It might have been him, but somebody was asking him, because of his meteoric rise, that he didn't actually have the political experience that many people had. Something around, maybe it was for State of the Union address. He said, I just have to remind myself to act as if. And what I would offer to the audience, and what I'm hearing and what you're sharing, Melissa, is you don't feel lovable, and that's a valid feeling. But what would you do if you were lovable? Like, act as if you were lovable. How would you make a decision? Even if, like, yeah, are we ever going to inherit? Are we ever going to own fully all these things about ourselves? No, but you can still make decisions for that place without having to fully encompass it for yourself. And so that's what I hear for you, is like owning that. And like, and the thing that's cool that I'll offer to the audience, and I'm curious what your thoughts with this, Melissa, is as you practice acting as if, it actually becomes your reality.
It does. And I will tell you, as a biologist and as a pastor, that mostly as a biologist, the brain is held together by what's called glial cells. And these little guys at night are like little Roombas that clean out your brain. All the stuff that's not important gets swept away and taken out in the trash. And the stuff that is important gets more neural connections made. And the way that these glial cells know what's important and what's garbage is the amount of connections already made. And guess how you make neural connections in your brain? You spend time imagining it. You spend time thinking on it. So whatever you dwell on, whatever you think on, it's going to become a reality, whether it's a reality you want or not.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. That's so amazing. I've never heard the term glial cells, like it GLEL.
GLIAL.
Oh, it's so interesting. Look at that. Brought it all back to biology. What a full circle. Right. I love that. I like it. You're like, I don't really know much about this stuff, but I'm a geek on it. And then you're like, did you know there's a cell that you've never heard of that's in your brain that actually, like, this is like the perfect, if we were doing some sort of like movie or something, or like an improv show, this is like the perfect callback, where we started with what do you geek out about? Science. And then you just offered me a new science thing that I had no idea about that actually relates to our specific conversation. So Melissa, kudos to you. That was very impressive.
Thank you.
Whether
Well, I
planned or
was a
not.
scientist for a portion of my life before the other. So
there you go. All right. So how can the audience connect with you? And just before you answer that, everything you're about to say is going to go in the show notes. It'll be on my website. So it's not like anybody has to write this down, but how can people connect with you and learn more about programs? If we've got anybody in ministry out there who wants to connect with you, learn more about you, what you do for other people in the field, all of that. How can people find you and connect with you?
Excellent. My website is Light, Life, and Love Ministries. And, God called forth light, and from that came life, and God called it good. So Light, Life, Love Ministries.com.
Nice. And last thing, Melissa.
Yes.
Love if you.
Oh, and I'm also on Facebook.
Oh,
just find me on Facebook. Perfect. Too. Yeah.
There you go. And then send her a lot of spam. You like a lot of spam on Facebook, right?
Love it. Love it. Love it. Love it.
Wait till she's on her. Wait till she's on her cruise ship. Yeah, wait till she's on her next cruise, and then send her a lot of Facebook spam.
Or oddly, if you want to find me, if you set a bowl of ice cream out, there's a really good chance I might just appear. So there's that too.
You're like Santa Claus, but with ice cream.
Right.
That's awesome. All right. So last thing, leave us with some words of wisdom, and they should fit on a Post-it note. What do you got for us?
Take the next step. Just take it. Don't wait till it's perfect. Just take the next step.
Awesome, Melissa. I am a big fan of that. Big fan of that advice, and it's something that I wish I would have learned earlier in my life.
Me too.
I'm working on it now too. Yeah, it's so funny when you hit a certain age that most people you talk to, they're like, I'm 43. I did the math for you. I won't out your age. People can do the math if they want to, but it doesn't matter. It's funny when you talk to people who are a little bit older, have more experience. That's almost always the advice you get. But when you're younger, it's like, oh, you got to have it all figured out. You got to know exactly how it's going to go. And like, why can't we figure this out earlier in our life? Like, I guess this is just part of the process of being a human is it just doesn't work unless you just figure it out for yourself.
Nobody has it figured out.
Yeah.
Nobody has it figured out. So just do something. Learn from it. You might fail epically. And if you do, I applaud you because you're going to learn so much and take another step. Go from there. And if you're going to fail magnificently.
Like just crash and burn.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Very nice, Melissa. Well, it was so good to get to know you today. I'm glad we made this happen. And I wish you the very best in everything you're up to, very best to your congregation. I'm sure some of the people there will listen to this, hopefully. And I would love to hear. Yeah. Yeah. Well, make sure it's the very first thing you talk about in the next one. You're like, by the way, you have to listen to this thing.
Absolutely. And, it's the priority. Absolutely.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. This is what people are there for.
Yeah.
But and I'd love to hear if you get any feedback, love to hear that from you directly. If people want to reach out to me, you can do that through the podcast. I put my contact information in there. And stay safe, stay healthy, and I'm sure we'll be connecting again soon, Melissa.
Thanks, Jason, for this opportunity. I've loved it. And guess what I'm going to go do now?
Eat ice cream?
Okay, see, now I totally got distracted. I may have to do that. But after I eat my ice cream, I'm going to the post office where I'm picking up a box of books. I just wrote a book and I'm going to open up a box of books that I wrote.
Wow, that's super cool.
Yes. Check out the website for sure. And you'll see information about that as well.
That's cool. Well, Melissa, I would like to make you an offer live here in the air, not live. Well, we're live. This will not be live when it comes out.
Live-ish.
Yeah, live. Yeah, half live, right? I would love if you either get a selfie or if you get a selfie, take a picture of that. And when we release your episode here in a few weeks on Instagram and Facebook, I would love to, in addition to the show marketing material, also have a picture of you doing that. So if you happen to have somebody that can take a picture or a selfie, I would love to post that for you as well, so we can all see you doing that. That's a huge achievement. and especially from
Awesome.
somebody who
Thank
hates
you.
writing.
So about, 50, 60 different ones, or, no, I'm just kidding. I'll send one to
Exactly.
you.
Overwhelming. But thank you, Melissa. Congratulations, and enjoy the post office and enjoy the new book. And talk to you soon.
Thanks, Jason. This has been a blast.
Thanks.
I like
Thanks,
what you
Melissa.
do.
Thank you. Bye.
Thanks for listening to another episode of Talking to Cool People with Jason Frizzell. If you enjoyed today's episode, please tell your friends. Follow us on Instagram and Facebook, and give us a shout out, or take a moment to leave a review on iTunes. If something from today's episode piqued your interest and you'd like to connect, email us at podcast@jasonfrizzell.com. We love hearing from our listeners because you're cool people too.